All right, what's up, guys? It's Rick from DFS On Demand, and this is part 4 of the Quarter Arcade Challenge, and it's a special one because this is the Christmas Day slate. Probably the best day of the NBA season. You get 5 marquee matchups with no games overlapping. That's going to create some interesting issues that we'll talk about in a second. But before I do that, I want to give an update on where the bankroll currently stands. So let's do that. So here we go. Through 5 slates, that's 250 lineups. We are up $2.14, which is just about 3.5% ROI. This was after a pretty big beating that we took on the last slate. We had a highly owned dud. Tony Snell, I believe, was the one that did us in. So otherwise, we are still in the green, which is obviously always a good thing as we continue to go through this challenge. Now, let's talk quickly about this slate here. And again, just for reference here, it is 9:45 Pacific, so 12:45 a.m. Eastern. Santa will be making an appearance at your roof here shortly, I believe. But what's really interesting about this slate is, number one, it's going to start at noon Eastern. A very early tip-off. For us on the West Coast, it's 9 a.m. It's even earlier. But the last game isn't until 10:30 Eastern, which means there's literally 10 hours between the first game of the slate and the last game, which is going to present a lot of issues. Normally on any given night, there's only like 3 hours between the first game and the last game of the slate. It's usually a 7 o'clock Eastern start, and then a 10 is the last game, or like 10:30 is usually, ever the last game. Nothing's ever after that. Here we have 10 hours in between the first game and the last game, and now with the new DraftKings rules where you cannot late swap, that means you're going to have to lock in your lineups 10 hours before the last game starts here, which means, what are we going to do about news? It wasn't like this last year, so this is really a unique slate that we've never seen on DraftKings before in terms of the NBA. So we have question marks around specifically Chris Paul, who's supposed to be a game time decision in the last game of the day against the Lakers. You would love to roll out Chris Paul against the Lakers in an excellent matchup without Blake Griffin, but we don't know if he's going to play. And you almost can't even roster his backups because what if Chris Paul does play? Like, we don't know what's going to happen. So this is kind of a really unique dilemma that we're in here. So I don't know how we're going to handle this. I think Austin Rivers is probably going to be the safer play because he'll play 25 minutes whether Chris Paul plays or not. If Chris Paul doesn't play, maybe he plays 30 minutes. I think Felton is really the risky guy, and Chris Paul is really risky. But man, wouldn't you love to unlock Chris Paul? And you have to assume that everyone's going to stay away from this situation, right? So wouldn't you love to unlock a Chris Paul who ends up playing against the Lakers without Blake at like 3% owned? Wouldn't you love that? You have to take on a lot of risk to do it, but it's out there. I have updated these projections, so I'm certainly aware that this is an early tip for everyone, and it's Christmas Day. So it's past midnight on the East Coast, so I have the new projections out, and that's what you're looking at right now. I will continue to update these as often as possible leading up to tip-off, but again, I'm not sure how much news we're going to get before then. I'm not sure how much these are actually going to change. But here we go. Just a couple of guys to point out very quickly. I really do like Al Horford. He's playing really well, and I made a note in my write-up, and I'm going to just read it here on my other screen. I think he's hit something like his last 4 games he's scored 40, or his last 5 games he's scored at least 40 DraftKings points 4 times, and he's hit like 3 or 4 of his last 22 three-pointers. So there's actually, what I would say room for improvement there if he starts knocking down a couple more of those. So I think he's a really interesting play and a really good matchup. Other than that, not too much notable here. I think Oklahoma City against Minnesota is going to be projected very highly. Where's my boy Russell? 61 DraftKings points, but I'll tell you what, that's what the projections say, and if you made me go over or under, I'd probably take over 61. The guy without Oladipo has put up 40 points in three straight games, and he's a walking triple double. This is a pretty good matchup with Minnesota. So I actually think these projections are probably a little underweight on Russell. So we'll see when we put these into the optimizer on Daily Fantasy Nerd. We'll see how that actually impacts it. But other than that, nothing too noteworthy here. Oh, I do want to see where Kevin Love shows up. 45 DraftKings points. He's a guy who I'm a little bit concerned about just because of that 7 game series in the finals last year against the Warriors. He just didn't play well. They were a real matchup issue for him. He had trouble staying on the court because they couldn't roll with the lineups with Kevin Love in it. So, really concerned about him, but that game should have plenty of fantasy goodness in it. But other than that, yeah, a really interesting slate. Interesting dilemma with the timing. It's Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody. Really appreciate you watching and following along. I will try to just make a quick video tomorrow morning before I get my lineups in of what we're going to go with. And then I'll wrap it up with a recap of how this slate went at some point. So still up in the green. It's Christmas Day. A lot of stuff to figure out, and we'll see what happens come tomorrow. Maybe one of us will get a nice Christmas gift of taking down a GPP. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. All right, welcome back. It's Christmas Day. Merry Christmas. Sitting here on Christmas morning making lineups on DraftKings. So let's talk about this a little bit here. We already talked about this dilemma that we're going to run into with the late game and not having any news on Chris Paul. So what I've done is I've just excluded him from any optimizations. I would love to just throw 100% at him and run the risk of cashing in nothing, but it's not worth the risk. I don't think Raymond Felton's worth the risk. Austin Rivers would be the guy that I'd at least feel comfortable playing because he's probably going to play, whether CP3 plays or not, he's probably going to play 25 minutes. If Chris Paul doesn't play, he might play 30. He might take a few more shots. So Austin Rivers would be the guy I'd be more interested in. But I've excluded Chris Paul, and this is the optimizations that we are getting for today. Again, this is an hour before tip-off, so we've got an hour to tweak this, although I'm not sure how much it's even going to change because of the lack of news that's going to probably come out in the next hour. There's probably nothing in the next hour that's going to come out that's going to change anything significantly here. So let's take a look at this. A little concerned about having 100% of Klay Thompson, and that's just because of how volatile he is. You can see 25, 41, 26, 40, 43, 29. He's kind of all over the place. The good news is this is exactly the type of player we want for a GPP because we're paying $6,500 and he has this high upside over 40, which he's done like, 5 times in the last 10 games. I like this type of player. I'm not thrilled that it's Klay Thompson right now today, but we'll take it. Other than that, Al Horford, I really loved and happy to have 98% of him. So if things go as they usually do, I'm sure Horford will have the really crappy game and Klay will have the massive game as I'm reverse touting them. But I really like Horford. And then interesting to see that we have 96% of Kawhi in this matchup, which I'm okay with here. So here is the last game against Chicago. He scored 43 fantasy points. I mean, outside of this game against New Orleans, he's essentially a lock to score 40 DraftKings points. So we'll take that from Kawhi all day long. All right. That is the most notable guys that we're going to have a lot of exposure to. Amir Johnson is the value play that we're checking in with here at $3,100. You can see he's coming off 2 really good games in a row. Would just love something in between this. I mean, I don't need 36 points from him. 22 would be cool, but I'd love like, 28 would be awesome here from Amir Johnson. All right, that's about it. This is probably what I'm going to roll with because I don't think anything else is going to change. I will tweet out this chart before tip off, so it's at DFS on demand. If you have any questions or comments, throw them in the comment section below, but I will come back and wrap up this slate and let you know how we did. All right, guys. See ya. All right, what's up, guys? I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas and did well on the Christmas Day slate. We did pretty good. So we'll talk about the core and results in a second, but we cashed for $25.75 on $12.50 worth of entries in the quarter arcade. So basically doubled our money, which we will take every single day for the rest of time. So let's look at these lineups here. And basically, I'll get rid of myself here. What we had is, here are our best lineups. 323 was the best. We had a lot of Kyrie. We had a ton of Klay Thompson. We had 100% basically of Kawhi and Amir. Horford we had a ton of. So these guys were just staples in all of our lineups, and they all came up really, really big for us. Let's look at that core a little bit. So here were our 8 most owned players. You can see ranging from 100% to 42%. And basically, I mean, we nailed most of them. Klay comes in at 5.1 times value, but look at these guys. Horford and Kawhi at 98 and 96% both go over 6 times. Kyrie, who we have in 72% of the lineups, I think he was probably one of the best plays on the slate in terms of value compared to what his actual salary was. Amir Johnson, he was a value play, but he saved us with 7 times value. And then Cantor went nuts himself. And I mean, we just really did a nice job here on the core, which is becoming a little bit of a trend. I mean, I've been really pleased, especially with this challenge and during this NBA season as a whole. I've been really pleased with the core of players that we've put together. We may not be getting the right combination to win a GPP, but our core players have allowed us to cash nearly every single night and turn a profit. So really, really pleased with that. Really happy with the projections. That should take us to, let me see, is there anything else I want to talk about here? Oh, I guess just the fact that we did so well, but we didn't have any Kevin Durant and we didn't have any Russell Westbrook. Goes to show you that we did a really nice job with this core. And then finally, that takes us to our updated results tab, which is here. Now through 6 days of this, so 300 lineups, we've got a 20.5% ROI. Thrilled with that. Average score of 278. Best score 337. I mean, this is going really well through 6 days. We hope to continue to win more than we lose and try to put ourselves in a position to win this thing, which I think we're doing. We're knocking on the door. We're getting a lot of cores right. When you do that often enough, we're going to put ourselves in a position to win here at some point. So really happy with this through 6 days. If you have any questions or comments about anything, throw a comment in the section below on YouTube or tweet me. It's at DFS on demand. But we'll get right back at it again tomorrow. All right, guys. See ya.